My husband told me I was staying behind when his company transferred him to Singapore, the promotion I'd helped him get, in the apartment I'd helped him afford, using connections I'd built for him. He said long distance wouldn't work, that I should understand this was his moment. I smiled, said I understood, and spent the next year building a life that made his Singapore dream look like a downgrade. We were at Capitol Grill in downtown Boston when Jared told me he was leaving the country without me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The irony of the location wasn't lost on me later, this overpriced steakhouse where we'd celebrated every milestone in his career. His first promotion. His senior manager title. The bonus that finally let us move out of our cramped apartment into something decent in Cambridge. I should have known something was wrong the moment we sat down. Jared kept checking his phone between bites of his ribeye, that specific kind of distracted energy that meant something big was happening. I thought it was about the VP position he'd been chasing for 6 months. The one I'd helped him prepare for, staying up until 2 a.m. running through presentation scenarios, editing his slides, coaching him through the corporate political minefield of who to impress and how. I was right. Just not in the way I expected. I got it, he said suddenly, setting down his phone with this massive grin. The VP role. They called an hour ago. I felt genuine happiness in that moment. Genuine pride. This man I'd been with for 7 years, married to for 4, finally getting the recognition he deserved. The recognition I'd helped him earn. Jared, that's incredible. I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. I knew they'd choose you. When do you start? Is it going to be the Boston office or are they moving you to New York? His smile flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. Singapore, he said. It's the Singapore office. VP of Asia Pacific Operations. My brain immediately shifted into planning mode. The mode I'd lived in for 7 years as the practical one in our relationship. Okay, Singapore. Wow. That's huge. I'll need to research visa requirements for spouses. My client base is mostly US-based, but I can work remotely from anywhere, so that's not an issue. How long is the assignment? 2 years? 3? 3 years minimum. He pulled his hand back, picked up his wine glass. Nat, here's the thing. Those 4 words. Here's the thing. The universal preface to bad news delivered by someone who's already made their decision and is now just managing your reaction to it. I think you should stay in Boston. The restaurant noise, the clinking glasses, the low conversations, the sizzle from the open kitchen, all of it faded into this strange muffled distance. Like I was underwater. Stay, I repeated. Not a question. Just trying the word out, seeing if it made sense in this context. It didn't. Long distance never works, Jared said, and he had that tone. The reasonable one. The one he used in business meetings when he was about to say no to something but wanted to sound collaborative about it. And your consulting business is really established here. You've built something solid in Boston. It wouldn't make sense to uproot all of that. I set down my fork very carefully. Jared, I'm a freelance consultant. My entire business exists on my laptop and Zoom calls. I can literally work from anywhere. But your clients are here. Your network is here. My clients are in 12 different states. I met with exactly 2 of them in person this year. The rest is virtual. He shifted in his seat. Okay, but this is a huge opportunity for me. A growth opportunity. I need to focus completely on establishing myself in a new market, new team, new culture. It's going to be intense, especially the first year. The implication landed like a slap. You're saying I'd be a distraction. I'm saying we both need to think about what's best for our careers right now. He reached for my hand again, but I pulled it back. We can see how it goes. Visit each other. Maybe after the first year, if things stabilize. You're breaking up with me. I'm being realistic about what a 3-year international assignment means for a relationship. You're breaking up with me, I said again, quieter this time. You just don't want to say it directly. Jared's jaw tightened. That thing he did when he thought I was being difficult. I'm trying to have an adult conversation about a complicated situation. Don't make this dramatic. Dramatic. I was being dramatic. I looked at him across the table, this man I'd supported through 2 layoffs, 3 job searches, countless Sunday nights when he panicked about presentations. The man whose career I'd actively helped build while treating my own work like it was secondary, something that could flex around his needs. When did you accept the position? I asked. His eyes slid away. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. He'd known for 2 weeks. We'd had dinner with his parents last weekend. We'd gone to a movie on Tuesday. We'd had sex on Thursday morning before work. And the entire time, he'd known he was leaving the country without me. Have you signed the apartment lease in Singapore? Pause. Yes. 1 bedroom or 2? Another pause. 1. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not my heart breaking, that would come later. This was something else. Something colder. The death of assumptions I'd built an entire life around. The waiter appeared with dessert. Chocolate lava cake with vanilla ice cream. My favorite. Jared had pre-ordered it. When do you leave? I asked, voice steady. April 3rd. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. He was giving me 6 weeks' notice. Like I was a tenant in his life and he was choosing not to renew the lease. I looked at his hand on the table. At the Mont Blanc pen next to his water glass. The $400 pen I'd bought him when he made senior manager 2 years ago. I'd had it engraved, "To New Heights, N." He was using it to sign the credit card receipt. For our $300 dinner. That I'd probably end up splitting with him, because that's how we did things. 50-50. Equal partnership. Except when it came to whose career mattered more, whose dreams got prioritized, whose life got to expand while the other person's contracted. I smiled at him. Really smiled. And I saw relief flood his face. I understand, I said. I didn't. Not yet. But I would. I need to back up and explain how we got here. How a woman who'd built a successful consulting business ended up sitting in a restaurant being told she was staying behind, like luggage that wouldn't fit in the overhead compartment. Jared and I met in 2017 at a networking event in Cambridge. One of those painful after-work mixers where everyone's holding cheap wine and pretending their jobs are more interesting than they actually are. He was a project manager at a mid-sized tech company. I was 2 years into my freelance consulting practice, specializing in operational efficiency for startups. He was charming. Funny. Had this self-deprecating humor about working in tech without actually understanding how to code. I'm the guy who translates between the engineers and the humans, he'd said, and I'd laughed. We exchanged numbers. Had coffee 3 days later. Dinner a week after that. The relationship moved fast. We moved in together after 8 months. Jared was making $85,000 a year. I was pulling in around $95,000, but freelance income is unpredictable, so we split rent proportionally to his salary to keep things fair. That was the beginning of a pattern I didn't recognize for years. My income was treated as variable, uncertain, not quite real money. His salary was dependable, serious, worthy of building a life around. So when he needed a new suit for interviews, I paid for it. When his car needed $2,000 in repairs, I covered it. When he decided to get his MBA part-time, I adjusted my work schedule to be home for dinner because he needed structure and support. I told myself this was partnership. This was what you did when you loved someone and believed in their potential. In 2019, Jared lost his job. Company restructuring. He was devastated. I kept our household running. Paid full rent for 4 months. Made sure his health insurance didn't lapse. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sent him job listings every morning. Edited his resume 17 times. "You're too good to me," he'd say, and I'd feel needed. Important. Like I was investing in our future together. He found a new position that spring. Senior project manager at a growing tech company, $110,000 base plus bonus potential. We got married in 2021. Small ceremony, just immediate family. I'd wanted something bigger, but Jared worried about the cost. I paid for most of it from a particularly good quarter of consulting revenue. The wedding planner, the venue, the photographer. Jared covered the bar tab. After the wedding, things shifted. Jared started talking about his career with this intensity he hadn't had before. The MBA was paying off. He was getting noticed by senior leadership. He'd come home energized, talking about organizational restructures and market expansion and who was positioning themselves for the next round of promotions. I was happy for him. My business was doing well too. I'd landed a 6-month contract with a Series B startup paying $12,000 a month. But when I talked about my work, Jared would listen with this distracted expression, nodding in the right places but clearly thinking about something else. "That's great, babe," he'd say. Then he'd pivot back to his stuff. In early 2023, we moved to a better apartment in Cambridge. 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, walking distance to Harvard Square. Rent was $3,400 a month. Jared was making $135,000. I was averaging $140,000, but again, freelance income was unreliable, so we split it 50-50. I didn't argue. I could finally have a real home office. That's also when Jared started traveling for work. Singapore, Tokyo, London. Building relationships with the international teams, he explained. He'd be gone for a week at a time, come back exhausted. I managed everything while he was gone. Bills, groceries, his mother's birthday present, the cat we'd adopted who immediately bonded with me because I was the only one consistently home. Last fall, Jared mentioned the VP position was opening up. His boss had suggested he apply. "It's a long shot," he'd said. "But worth trying." I jumped into action immediately. Helped him research the role, the regional market dynamics, the cultural considerations. I even connected him with my former client, Wesley Chen, who worked in the Singapore office. Wesley and I had worked together 3 years ago when his startup was navigating a difficult pivot. We'd stayed in touch professionally. When I asked if he'd take a call with Jared, he said yes immediately. That call turned into 3 more conversations. Wesley gave Jared the insight that probably won him the job. Jared sent Wesley a thank you email. Never mentioned to his boss that his wife had made the introduction. Started referring to Wesley as my contact in Singapore in meetings. I didn't correct him. I told myself it didn't matter who got credit as long as Jared got the opportunity. Now, sitting in Capitol Grill with chocolate lava cake melting in front of me, I realized something. I'd spent 7 years building Jared's career while treating my own success as something secondary and easily relocated. I'd made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. And the moment he didn't need me anymore, the moment his career could finally stand on its own, he was leaving me behind. "You're really okay with this?" Jared asked, studying my face. I took a bite of the dessert. It tasted like nothing. "I'm really okay with this," I lied. The drive home from the restaurant was silent. Jared tried to fill it with logistics talk, when he'd need to start packing, whether we should sell his car or keep it for when he visited, how often we could realistically video chat given the time difference. 13 hours ahead. Singapore would be waking up when Boston went to sleep. I made appropriate noises. That makes sense. We'll figure it out. We pulled into our parking spot under the Cambridge apartment building. The spot I'd circled for 20 minutes to find when we first moved in, memorizing the pattern of when people left for work. Jared had been in Tokyo that week for meetings. Inside the apartment, he headed straight for the bedroom. I'm exhausted. That state coma is hitting hard. It was 9:30 p.m. I stood in our living room, my living room. I'd decorated it, chosen every piece of furniture, hung every piece of art, and felt something crack wider in my chest. The same fissure that had opened at the restaurant. I walked to Jared's home office. The second bedroom we'd been so excited about when we moved in. He'd claimed it immediately for his workspace, even though I worked from home 5 days a week and he went into the office 4. My workspace was a desk in the corner of our bedroom, positioned so I could see the wall. His office had the window. The good light. The door that closed. I turned on his computer. We'd always had each other's passwords. Married people don't keep secrets, he'd said when we exchanged them 3 years ago. One of those relationship transparency things that seemed romantic at the time. The screen lit up. His email was already open. I almost didn't search. Almost closed the laptop and walked away. Chose to believe the version of events he'd presented, that this was a difficult career decision we were navigating together as partners. But something stopped me. Maybe intuition. Maybe the fact that 2 weeks kept echoing in my head. 2 weeks of knowing and not telling me. 2 weeks of what? I typed Singapore into his email search bar. The first result was from his boss, dated 3 months ago. December 15th. Jared, preliminary discussion about the VP role. Before we move forward officially, I need to know, is the international relocation feasible for your situation? I know you're married. Would Natasha be relocating with you? His response, same day, still working through the personal logistics, but I'm definitely interested. Can I get back to you after the holidays? 3 months ago. He'd been talking about this position for 3 months and never mentioned it to me. I kept scrolling. January 8th, email from Jared to his boss, talked it through over the break. The relocation works for me. Natasha's supportive and we agree long distance is manageable given the opportunity. When can we discuss next steps? I read that 3 times. Talked it through over the break. We'd spent the holidays in Rhode Island with his parents. Not once did he mention Singapore. Not once did we have any conversation remotely resembling talking it through. Another email. January 22nd, from someone named Claudette Livingston in HR. Jared, per our conversation, I'm sending the relocation package details. As discussed, the company covers one-way airfare for employee, shipping container, up to 50 cubic meters, 30 days temporary housing, visa fees for employee. The package is structured for individual relocation. If you want to add a dependent spouse, you'd need to cover the additional airfare and visa fees out of pocket, estimated at $3,500 total. Let me know how you want to proceed. His response, let's proceed with the individual package. Cleaner that way. Cleaner that way. I stood up from his desk. Walked to the kitchen. Poured a glass of water I didn't drink. My hands were shaking. He hadn't just decided I was staying behind in the last 2 weeks. He'd decided 3 months ago. Had actively structured his relocation package to exclude me. Had told his employer we'd talked it through when we hadn't. Had let me help him prepare for interviews, make introductions, edit presentations, all while knowing I wasn't part of the plan. I went back to the office. Kept searching. Found a text thread he'd backed up to his email. Between him and someone saved as G. February 3rd. G, so you're really doing it? Leaving Boston? Jared, yep. Signed the offer yesterday. G, and Natasha? Jared, not coming. We're going to try long distance, but honestly, I think this is probably the end. Just feels cleaner to make the break now rather than drag it out. Gee, that's cold, man. Jared, it's practical. We've been growing apart anyway. She's so focused on her little consulting thing, and I need someone who understands what it takes to operate at this level. Someone ambitious. Little consulting thing. My business that had kept us afloat during his unemployment. My income that had paid his student loans. My little consulting thing that currently out-earned his salary. Gee, have you met someone else? Jared, not officially. But there's a woman on the Singapore team. Abigail. Project manager, really sharp. We've been talking a lot during the interview process. Nothing's happened, but there's definitely something there. My vision blurred. I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. There was someone else. Maybe not physically yet, but emotionally. He'd been building something with someone else while still coming home to me. While still sleeping beside me. While still using the connections I'd built for him to secure the job that would take him to her. I opened a new search. Typed Abigail Singapore. One result. An email introduction from Wesley Chen. My Wesley. The client I'd connected Jared with. Jared, great chatting yesterday. Wanted to introduce you to Abigail Mason, one of our best PMs here. She's been in Singapore for 2 years and can give you the ground-level perspective on working here. Abigail, Jared is interviewing for the VP role and comes highly recommended. The email thread continued. Jared and Abigail exchanging messages. Professional at first. Then friendly. Then something else. Can't wait to show you around Singapore properly when you get here. I have a feeling we're going to work really well together. Nobody here understands my sense of humor. Refreshing to talk to someone who gets it. Then, from 2 weeks ago, the day after Jared signed his offer. It's official. I accepted. Yes. When do you arrive? April 3rd. Can you pick me up from the airport? I know it's a big ask. Are you kidding? Obviously. I'll make a sign and everything. You're the best. Can't wait to finally see you in person. Same. I have a feeling everything's about to change. I closed the laptop. Walked to the bedroom where Jared was already asleep, one arm flung over my side of the bed. I stood in the doorway watching him. This man I'd loved. This man I'd sacrificed for. This man who'd systematically planned his exit from our marriage while letting me believe I was helping him build our future. Something shifted in that moment. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something harder was forming. Something cold and precise. He wanted to leave me behind? Fine. But he was going to learn exactly what he was leaving behind. And by the time I was done, his shiny Singapore opportunity was going to look like the biggest mistake of his life. I pulled out my phone and texted my best friend, Paris. Are you awake? I need you. 3 dots appeared immediately. Always. What's wrong? Everything. Can I come over? Doors unlocked. I grabbed my laptop, my phone charger, and my wallet. Didn't pack a bag. Didn't leave a note. Just walked out of the apartment I'd spent 3 years making into a home and got in my car. Behind me, Jared slept peacefully, having no idea that the woman who'd spent 7 years building his life was about to dismantle everything he thought he'd secured. Paris lived in Somerville, 20 minutes from Cambridge. Her apartment was a tiny 1-bedroom above a Vietnamese restaurant, and it always smelled faintly of faux broth and lemongrass. Comforting. Real. She opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. Wine or whiskey? Information first. Alcohol after. We sat on her couch, a thrifted velvet thing she'd reupholstered herself because Paris believed in doing everything the hard way if it meant doing it right. She was a graphic designer, freelance like me, and the only person in my life who'd never once suggested I should get a real job. I told her everything. The restaurant. The staying behind speech. What I'd found on Jared's computer. Paris's expression went from concerned to furious in about 90 seconds. 3 months, she said flatly. He knew for 3 months. And there's someone else. Abigail Mason. She's in Singapore already. Of course there is. Paris got up, paced to her kitchen, came back with whiskey and 2 glasses. There's always someone else when a man suddenly decides his wife of 4 years is holding him back. She poured generously. We both drank. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet. But even as I said it, I could feel something forming. A plan without shape yet. An intention without details. Do you want to fight for the marriage? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I want to know everything first. The full truth. And then I want him to face actual consequences for once in his life. Paris smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now we're talking. I opened my laptop. Paris moved closer, reading over my shoulder as I went back through Jared's email systematically this time. Not just searching Singapore, but looking for patterns. We found them. December through February, there were dozens of emails with Abigail. Ostensibly about work, project updates, team dynamics, office culture in Singapore. But the tone was wrong. Too personal. Too frequent. Messages sent at 11 p.m. Boston time, which would be noon in Singapore. Him staying up late to talk to her when I was already asleep. You should grab coffee with the team lead before you officially start. He's particular about hierarchy. Thanks for the tip. You're going to be my survival guide there. Already planning the welcome tour. There's this hawker center near the office. Best chili crab you'll ever have. Can't wait. For the food and the company. I felt Paris tense beside me. That's not work talk, she said. No. It's not. We kept digging. Found Jared's credit card statements in his email. He had them sent as PDFs for organization purposes. January showed a charge to a jewelry website. $450. I'd never received any jewelry in January. Paris pulled up the jewelry site, found the order number in his email confirmation, cross-referenced it. A necklace. Rose gold pendant, delicate chain. Shipped to the Singapore office address, attention, Abigail Mason. He sent her a $450 necklace, Paris said slowly. While telling you that you couldn't afford to relocate together. My hands had stopped shaking. I felt eerily calm now. Clinical. What else? I asked. We found more. So much more. Flight searches to Singapore from November. He'd been researching this for 4 months, not 3. Apartment listings he'd saved. A gym membership inquiry. A country club application that made me laugh out loud because Jared had never played golf in his life, but apparently Singapore Jared was going to be a country club guy. There was an email to a realtor in Singapore from January. Looking for a modern 1-bedroom, preferably in the Orchard area. Budget up to $4,000 SGD monthly. I'm relocating for work, single, no pets, quiet tenant. Single. He'd told the realtor he was single in January while we were still married, still living together, still sharing a bed. I want to throw up, I said. Don't. Keep reading. Get angry instead. She was right. Anger was cleaner. Anger could be useful. We found the text backups next. He synced his phone to his computer for backup, something I'd set up for him 2 years ago when he lost his phone and panicked about losing contacts. The texts downloaded automatically. I opened the archive. Searched for Abigail. Hundreds of messages. Going back to December. The early ones were cautious. Professional. Then they shifted. Working late tonight. This project is killing me. Same here. 2 a.m. and I'm still on this deck. Send help. Coffee help or emotional support help? Both? Wish I could. Soon though. 3 more months. 3 more months. That was sent in January. 3 months from January was April. When he was scheduled to move. The messages got progressively more intimate. Not sexual, Jared was too smart for that, left too much of a paper trail. But intimate in the way that mattered. Emotional cheating that laid the groundwork for physical cheating. Had the worst meeting today. Felt like I was explaining color to people who only see black and white. I get that. Nobody here gets my vision either. You would. I can tell. I do. We're going to do amazing work together. Then, from 2 weeks ago, the day after Jared signed his offer. It's official. I accepted. Yes. When do you arrive? April 3rd. Can you pick me up from the airport? I know it's a big ask. Are you kidding? Obviously. I'll make a sign and everything. You're the best. Can't wait to finally see you in person. Same. I have a feeling everything's about to change. I stared at that message. Read it 5 times. I have a feeling everything's about to change. She was right. Everything was about to change. Just not in the way either of them expected. Paris was watching me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Jared has built this perfect narrative in his head. That he's moving to Singapore for his career. That he's making the brave, difficult choice to end our marriage because we've grown apart. That he's going to start fresh with Abigail and become this successful executive living his best life in Southeast Asia. And I'm going to let him think that's what's happening. Right up until it all falls apart. I opened a new document on my laptop. Started making notes. Not emotional notes. Strategic ones. Timeline of deception, November through March. 4 months of planning his exit while lying to me daily. Financial analysis, what I'd contributed to our relationship versus what he had. Not just money, time, connections, emotional labor, career sacrifices. Evidence collected, emails, texts, credit card statements, the jewelry purchase, the realtor email where he claimed to be single. Paris read over my shoulder. You're building a case. I am. For what? I don't know yet. But whatever I'm building, it's going to be airtight. We worked until 4 a.m. Paris pulling up spreadsheets, me documenting every lie, every expense, every moment when Jared had used our joint resources to build his exit strategy. I calculated my financial contributions over 7 years. Not just the obvious ones, rent when he was unemployed, his MBA tuition support, the wedding costs. But the smaller things that added up. Groceries I'd bought when money was tight. Gas money I'd given him for job interviews. The $400 Mont Blanc pen. His professional wardrobe. The networking event tickets. The conference fees. Conservative estimate, $87,000. $87,000 I'd invested in Jared Mills over 7 years. You know what the worst part is? I said as dawn started breaking outside Paris's window. What? I would have supported the Singapore move. If he'd been honest. If he'd said, this is an incredible opportunity, let's figure out how we make this work as a couple. I would have moved with him. Rebuilt my business there. Learned the market. Made it work. But he didn't want you to come. No. He wanted the promotion and the fresh start and the new woman. He just didn't want to be the bad guy who asked for a divorce. So he engineered a situation where I'd be the one staying behind, the one unable to follow, the one who'd eventually agree that long distance wasn't working. Paris nodded slowly. He was always going to leave you. He just wanted you to think it was circumstances, not choice. Exactly. I closed my laptop. Felt the weight of the last 6 hours settle on me. I'm not going to beg him to stay, I said. I'm not going to fight for a marriage he already ended in his head 4 months ago. I'm going to let him go to Singapore. Let him think he's won. Let him start his new life. And then? I smiled. For the first time since the restaurant, I smiled. And then I'm going to build something so good, so successful, so undeniably better than what he left behind, that he'll spend the rest of his life knowing he gave up the best thing that ever happened to him. Paris raised her whiskey glass. To revenge. Not revenge, I corrected. Justice. We clinked glasses as the sun rose over Somerville. I went back to the Cambridge apartment around 7 a.m. Jared was in the shower, getting ready for work like it was any other Tuesday. Like he hadn't just dismantled our marriage over steak and chocolate cake 12 hours earlier. I made coffee. His favorite kind, the expensive beans from that roaster in Harvard Square that he insisted made a difference. I even frothed the oat milk the way he liked it. When he emerged from the bedroom, dressed in the navy suit I'd helped him pick out last year, he looked relieved to see me. "Hey," he said carefully. "I wasn't sure if you'd be here." "Where else would I be?" He crossed to the kitchen, accepted the coffee I handed him. "I thought maybe you'd stay at Paris's. Process everything." I did stay at Paris's. Now I'm back. We should talk logistics. I watched relief flood his face. This was the Natasha he knew. Practical. Solution-oriented. Making things easier for him. Okay. Yeah. Good. He sipped his coffee. "What are you thinking?" I sat at our kitchen table, the one I'd found on Facebook Marketplace, and refinished myself because he said we couldn't afford a new one. "You leave April 3rd. That's 5 weeks. We should probably tell people separately. Your family, my family. Keep it simple. You got an incredible opportunity, long distance wasn't feasible, we're separating amicably." "Right. Amicably." He looked almost grateful. "I don't want this to be ugly, Nat." "Neither do I." That was true. Ugly was messy, emotional, uncontrolled. I wanted something else entirely. Something precise. "What about the apartment?" he asked. "The lease is in both our names through August. I can cover it until then, figure out if I want to renew or find something smaller." "You sure?" "I can contribute some. You'll have your own rent in Singapore. I'll handle Boston." I smiled at him. "My business is doing well. I can manage." He didn't catch it. Didn't hear the edge underneath the pleasant tone. "And we should probably talk about." He hesitated. "Like, are we talking separation or divorce?" "Let's see how the long distance goes first," I said, playing into his script perfectly. "No need to rush into legal proceedings if we're not sure yet." More relief. He'd wanted permission to delay, to avoid being the one who asked for divorce, to keep his options open in case Singapore didn't work out. "That makes sense," he said. "Keep things flexible." Flexible. Sure. We finished our coffee. He left for work. Kissed my forehead on his way out, that automatic gesture that meant nothing anymore. The second the door closed, I opened my laptop. First call, Julia Boseman, the best divorce attorney in Boston according to every professional woman I knew. Paris had texted me her number at 5 a.m. with 3 fire emojis. Julia's receptionist said she was booked for 3 weeks. I said I'd wait. Got an appointment for March 28th, 5 days before Jared's departure. Second call, my accountant, Stan Pullman. He'd been doing my taxes for 4 years, knew my business inside and out. "Stan, hypothetically, if someone were getting divorced, how would they protect their business assets?" Pause. "Natasha, is everything okay?" "It will be." "What do I need?" He told me. I took notes. Opened a new business banking account that afternoon, Natasha Archibald Consulting LLC, fully separate from any joint accounts. I'd kept my maiden name Archibald for business when we married, easier for client continuity, I'd told Jared. He hadn't cared as long as I was Mrs. Mills at family events. Now that choice felt prophetic. Started routing all new client payments to the new account. Professional. Routine. Nothing alarming. By noon, my business finances were completely separated from anything Jared could claim or access. Third, I called my 3 biggest clients. Told them I was restructuring my business entity for tax purposes, sent new invoices with the new account information. Fourth, I called my parents in Vermont. This one was harder. Mom, I need to tell you something. I explained about Singapore. About Jared leaving. About us taking space to figure things out. I kept my voice steady, matter of fact. The story matched what Jared would tell his parents: difficult circumstances, nobody's fault, still care about each other. My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, Natasha Lynn, are you telling me everything? I'm telling you what you need to know right now. You're being very calm about this. I've had time to process. Another pause. Do you need money? Do you need to come home for a while? No. I'm okay. I just wanted you to hear it from me first. After we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand, feeling the strangest sensation. Not sadness. Not quite anger anymore either. Something colder. Something like clarity. I texted Paris, phase 1 complete. Business separated, attorney scheduled, family notified. You're scary efficient when you're angry. Not angry. Focused. Same energy. What's next? What was next? I looked around the apartment. At the life Jared was so eager to leave behind. At everything I'd built here while he was busy building his exit strategy. I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in 7 years. I updated my LinkedIn profile. Not just the basic information, but really updated it. New professional photo from last year's conference. Detailed descriptions of my consulting work. Recommendations from clients. Skills endorsements. Portfolio pieces. Then I started looking at opportunities. Not in Boston. In New York, San Francisco, Austin, Seattle. Markets where operational consultants with my experience were in high demand. Where I could 3x my rates and clients would pay it. I'd spent 7 years being flexible about my location because Jared's career came first. Making myself available because he needed support. Keeping my ambitions small because anything larger might threaten him. That was done now. I applied to 3 consulting positions in New York. Senior roles, leadership track, $200,000 plus base salary plus equity. The kind of jobs I'd told myself I wasn't ready for because Jared needed stability and I needed to be present. By 4 p.m., I had 2 responses requesting interviews. I called Paris. Are you free for dinner? Always. What are we celebrating? Nothing yet. But I need to tell you the actual plan. The real one. We met at a wine bar in Davis Square. Quiet corner booth, bottle of Pinot Noir, cheese plate we didn't touch. Okay, Paris said. Tell me. I leaned forward. Jared thinks he's getting the clean exit he engineered. That I'm the supportive wife who's going to make this easy for him. That will do the gradual separation thing where long distance naturally fades and eventually we quietly divorce with nobody having to be the bad guy. Right. I'm going to let him think that's what's happening. For the next 5 weeks, I'm the perfect supportive wife. I help him pack. I coordinate the logistics. I make this easy. I give him 0 reason to think I know about Abigail or the 4 months of planning or any of it. Paris nodded slowly. You let him leave thinking everything's fine. Exactly. He goes to Singapore on April 3rd. Starts his new job, his new life, his new relationship. Feels like he pulled it off cleanly. And then? And then on April 4th, 1 day after he lands, he gets served with divorce papers in Singapore. At his new office. In front of his new colleagues. Including Abigail. Paris's eyes widened. Can you do that? Julia's office confirmed it. International service is complicated but doable. And the filing will include documentation of his affair, his financial deception, and his misuse of marital assets to fund his relocation and his girlfriend's jewelry. Holy shit. It gets better. By the time those papers arrive, I'll already be gone from Boston. New job in New York, new apartment, new life. He won't be able to find me easily or show up trying to fix things. And the divorce filing will make it clear I want a clean split with equitable division of assets, meaning he owes me for 7 years of supporting his career. Paris was grinning now. You're not just leaving him. You're upgrading everything about your life while his falls apart. I'm not trying to destroy him, I said. I'm just making sure he faces the natural consequences of his choices. And making sure I get what I'm owed. Natasha Archibald, Paris raised her glass. You terrifying, brilliant woman. We clinked glasses. I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, not yet. But purpose. Direction. The cold clarity of knowing exactly what came next. Jared wanted to leave me behind? Fine. But he was going to discover that what he left behind was the only thing holding his life together. The next 5 weeks were the most methodical acting job of my life. Every morning, I woke up next to Jared and played the role of supportive wife navigating a difficult transition. Every evening, I helped him sort through belongings, decide what to ship to Singapore and what to leave behind. Do you think I need the winter coats? He asked one Saturday. Singapore's tropical year-round, I said. Leave them. You can always ship them later if you need them. He nodded, added them to the stay pile. Never occurred to him that later wasn't coming. That I'd be donating those coats to charity the day after he left. I was pleasant. Helpful. Asked appropriate questions about his transition plan. When do you start at the new office? Have they assigned you a team yet? What's the apartment like? Jared answered enthusiastically, never noticing that I took mental notes of every detail. Building my timeline. Documenting his excitement about a move he'd explicitly planned without me. At night, after he fell asleep, I worked. Not on his timeline, on mine. The New York interviews went well. Better than well. The second company, a venture-backed startup in Soho called Vertex Solutions, offered me a senior consultant position with a path to VP of operations within 18 months. $215,000 base salary, equity package, full benefits, signing bonus. I negotiated them up to $235,000 and accepted on March 15th. Start date, April 15th, 12 days after Jared's departure. Enough time to move, settle in, begin the next chapter before he even realized I'd started one. I found an apartment in Brooklyn, Cobble Hill, 1 bedroom, exposed brick, enormous windows. $2,800 a month, which felt like luxury compared to what I'd been paying proportionally in Cambridge. Signed the lease remotely. First month, last month, security deposit. All from my separate business account. Julia Boseman, my attorney, was a sharp woman in her 50s who wore designer suits and had a reputation for demolishing opposing counsel with procedural perfection. Your documentation is exceptional, she said during our first meeting, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. Most people come in with feelings and assumptions. You came with receipts. I've been tracking project expenses for clients for years. Same principle. She smiled. The timeline is clear. 4 months of planning his departure while misleading you about his intentions. The financial misappropriation is clear, using marital assets to fund his relocation and gifts for his affair partner. The adultery is clear, emotional affair documented through their communications. This is a strong case. What about the international service? Serving him in Singapore? Complicated but doable. We'll use a process server in Singapore. I have a firm we work with regularly. The papers will be delivered to his office, which is legal and ensures he can't claim he didn't receive them. I thought about that. Jared in his new office, probably showing Abigail around, feeling victorious. Then a stranger appearing with an envelope. How long does the actual divorce take? In Massachusetts, uncontested divorce takes minimum 6 months. But yours won't be uncontested. We're seeking equitable division of assets including compensation for your disproportionate financial contributions. Realistically, 12 to 18 months until finalization. But he'll know on April 4th that it's happening. He'll know on April 4th that it's happening, Julia confirmed. And that you're not the passive wife waiting at home for him to decide your future. Perfect. Meanwhile, at home, I helped Jared pack. We designated 2 weeks before his departure for sorting through 7 years of accumulated life. I documented everything. Not emotionally, strategically. Every item he chose to take, every item he abandoned. The expensive espresso machine I'd bought, he took it. The art we'd collected together, he left it. The furniture I'd refinished, he didn't even consider it his. The pattern was clear, he took anything valuable or useful that he could claim ownership of. Left behind anything that required effort or emotional investment. 2 weeks before his departure, his mother called me. Natasha, honey, I just wanted to check on you. Jared told us about Singapore and I know this must be so hard. Gretchen Mills had always been kind to me. Kinder than Jared deserved, honestly. It's an adjustment, I said carefully. But we're figuring it out. Are you really okay with long distance? Because if you need someone to talk to. I appreciate that, Gretchen. Really. But Jared and I are on the same page. We weren't. But she didn't need to know that yet. Eventually, she'd understand. Eventually, they'd all understand what her son had actually done. 1 week before departure, Jared's company threw him a going-away party. Open bar at a rooftop place in Seaport, harbor views, all his colleagues celebrating his big promotion. I went. Smiled. Made small talk. Accepted condolences about the difficult situation, like I was brave for being so understanding. You must be so proud of him, one of his colleagues said. I am, I replied. And in a way, it was true. I was proud of how thoroughly he'd shown me who he really was. I watched Jared across the room, holding court, telling stories about his big Singapore adventure. Saw him on his phone at one point, texting someone and smiling. Abigail, probably. Making plans for his arrival. He caught my eye and raised his beer glass in a small toast. I raised my wine glass back. To new beginnings, his expression said. To consequences, mine replied. The night before his flight, I made his favorite dinner. Pan-seared salmon with roasted vegetables and lemon butter sauce. Opened a nice bottle of wine. Set the table properly with cloth napkins. He seemed touched. You didn't have to do all this. Last dinner in our apartment for a while. Wanted to make it special. We ate. Talked about logistics, his flight time, how we'd stay in touch, when he might visit. All surface level. All performance. After dinner, we watched a movie. Some action thing he'd been wanting to see. I pretended to pay attention while mentally running through my checklist for tomorrow. He fell asleep on the couch halfway through. I covered him with a blanket and went to the bedroom. Pulled out my suitcase from the back of the closet. Started packing. Quietly, efficiently. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, important documents. Everything I'd need for the next few weeks until the movers came for the rest. By 2 a.m., I had 3 bags packed and hidden in my car downstairs. By 3 a.m., I'd done a final walkthrough of the apartment, taking photos of every room, every shared item, documenting the state of everything. By 4 a.m., I was back in bed, lying next to Jared, watching the ceiling fan circle slowly, knowing that in 12 hours he'd be gone and in 24 hours my real life would begin. His alarm went off at 5:30. He showered, dressed, double-checked his carry-on. I made coffee, toasted bagels, played the role one final time. You sure you're okay? He asked at the door, his Uber waiting downstairs. I'm sure. He hugged me. I let him. Felt nothing. I'll call you when I land. Safe flight. And then he was gone. Walking down the hallway with his rolling suitcase, getting into an elevator, disappearing from my life while thinking he was just beginning his new adventure. I closed the door. Locked it. Stood in the silence of the apartment. Then I smiled. Phase 2, complete. Let the consequences begin. The moment Jared's Uber turned the corner, I started moving. First, I called the movers. This is Natasha Archibald. I need to confirm my appointment for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Confirmed, Ms. Archibald. We have you down for a one-bedroom move from Cambridge to Brooklyn. 2-man crew, estimated 4 hours. Perfect. See you tomorrow. I'd booked them 3 weeks ago under my maiden name. Jared never knew. Second call, Julia Boseman. He just left for the airport, I said. Good. I'm filing the papers this afternoon. The service company in Singapore has his office address and will deliver them tomorrow morning Singapore time, which is tonight our time. You'll get confirmation within 24 hours. And the documentation is included? Everything. The affair evidence, the financial timeline, the jewelry purchase, the realtor email where he claimed to be single. The filing is comprehensive. He won't be able to claim this came out of nowhere. Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the easiest case I've had in years. Most people document nothing. You documented everything. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen where I'd made countless meals, hosted dinner parties, played the role of supportive wife. The marble countertop that had cost too much and that I'd argued against. The espresso machine Jared had taken with him this morning. He'd left me the cheap drip coffee maker we'd gotten as a wedding gift. The symbolism was perfect. I started packing systematically. Everything I'd bought or brought into the relationship, my desk, my bookshelves, my grandmother's quilt, the art I'd collected, my kitchen equipment, my clothing, my design books, the furniture I'd refinished. Everything we'd bought, together, but I'd paid for, the couch, the dining table, the bedroom set, the TV, the decent dishes. I left, the marble countertops. His dresser. His desk. The winter coats. Our wedding photos. The empty space where the espresso machine had been. I worked until midnight, labeling boxes, organizing, creating an inventory list with receipts where possible. At 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Jared, landed in Tokyo for layover. Long flight but good. Miss you already. I stared at the message for a long moment. Miss you already. The automatic thing people say. The thing that costs nothing and means less. I typed back, safe travels. Talk soon. 3 words. Polite. Distant. Final, though he didn't know it yet. By 3 a.m., everything was packed and labeled. The apartment looked gutted. You could see the outlines on the walls where my art had hung. The empty spaces where my furniture had been. I took photos. Every room, every angle. Evidence that I'd taken only what was mine. Then I did something that felt significant. I took off my wedding ring. The simple gold band we'd bought at a jewelry store in Brookline. Nothing fancy, Jared had said we should be practical about it. So we'd gotten matching bands for $800 total. I'd paid for both. I placed the ring on the marble counter, right in the center. Left it there catching the overhead light. Next to it, I placed an envelope. Inside, a note I'd written 3 weeks ago and revised 17 times until it was perfect. Jared. By the time you read this, you'll know about the divorce papers. You'll probably be angry. You might feel ambushed. But we both know this was over the moment you decided to exclude me from your plans 4 months ago. I found the emails. The texts with Abigail. The jewelry purchase. The realtor correspondence where you told them you were single. I've known since February. I just wanted to see if you'd tell me the truth voluntarily. You never did. I'm not interested in fighting or drama. I'm interested in equitable division of assets. My attorney has documentation of every financial contribution I made over 7 years. We'll handle this through legal channels. The apartment lease is in both our names through August. I've paid through July. After that, it's your responsibility to handle or terminate. I've taken only what I paid for. The inventory list is attached. Don't contact me directly. All communication goes through my attorney. I hope Singapore is everything you wanted. Natasha. Short. Clear. No emotion. No accusations beyond the facts. Just information and boundaries. I proofed it one final time, sealed the envelope, left it next to the ring. At 4 a.m., I took one last walk through the apartment. This place I'd called home for 3 years. This life I'd built that had turned out to be a performance. I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no sadness. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I was leaving on my own terms. At 5 a.m., I loaded the last bags into my car. 3 suitcases, my laptop bag, a box of immediate essentials. At 5:30, I drove away from Cambridge. Headed south on I-95 toward New York. Toward the apartment waiting for me in Brooklyn. Toward the job starting in 10 days. Toward a life that was entirely mine. The sun rose somewhere around Providence. I stopped for coffee at a rest stop, checked my phone. Nothing from Jared yet. He'd still be in the air, somewhere over the Pacific, probably watching movies and imagining his triumphant arrival in Singapore. Abigail waiting at the airport with her welcome sign. His new life beginning. He had about 18 hours left before everything fell apart. I got back in the car and kept driving. My phone rang around noon. Paris. Are you on the road? Just past New Haven. How are you feeling? I thought about it. Free, I said finally. I feel free. Text me when you get to Brooklyn. I'm coming down this weekend to help you unpack and celebrate. Celebrate what? Your divorce. Your new job. Your escape from a man who didn't deserve you. Take your pick. I smiled. All of the above. By 2 p.m., I was crossing into Manhattan. The skyline rose up ahead of me, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not excitement exactly. More like recognition. This was supposed to be my city. I'd talked about moving here years ago, before Jared, before the compromise of staying in Boston for his career. Now here I was. Not because of him, but because of myself. I found my building in Cobble Hill around 3 p.m. A beautiful brownstone with a red door and window boxes. My apartment was on the 2nd floor, bright and open and completely empty. I stood in the center of the main room, surrounded by my packed bags, and pulled out my phone. Texted Julia, I'm in New York. Ready when you are. Her response came immediately, papers filing in 1 hour. Service scheduled for tomorrow morning Singapore time. You've officially vanished from his life. I texted my new boss at Vertex Solutions, confirming start date April 15th, looking forward to it. Then I texted Paris, I'm here. Apartment is perfect. New life officially begins. I sat down on the floor, back against the wall, and waited. Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Jared was hours away from landing. Hours away from starting his new job. Hours away from introducing Abigail to his colleagues as his contact in Singapore. And hours away from discovering that the woman he'd left behind had already built something better. Jared landed in Singapore at 6 a.m. local time on April 4th. That was 6 p.m. on April 3rd in New York. I was unpacking kitchen boxes in my Brooklyn apartment when my phone lit up with his text. Made it. Singapore is incredible. Abigail picked me up from the airport, so nice of her. Heading to the apartment to shower and then meeting the team at 2 p.m. We'll call you tonight once I'm settled. Love you. Love you. Automatic. Meaningless. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, Julia called. The papers were served at 9:47 a.m. Singapore time. He signed for receipt in the main lobby of his office building. Multiple witnesses. I was holding a coffee mug I just unpacked. Set it down carefully on the counter. Did the server say anything about his reaction? Professional service doesn't include commentary, but she noted he appeared extremely surprised and distressed. Asked multiple times if there was a mistake. There wasn't. No. There wasn't. He has 30 days to respond through legal representation. Given the international complication and the comprehensive evidence, I'd estimate he'll need at least a week to even find an attorney willing to take this on. After we hung up, I stood in my new kitchen with late afternoon light coming through the windows and waited. 10 minutes passed. 20. At the 30-minute mark, my phone exploded. 7 missed calls from Jared. Then texts started flooding in. What the fuck, Natasha? You had me served at my office. On my first day. In front of everyone. Call me right now. This is insane. We can work this out. Please just call me. I watched them come in, one after another. Ignored all of them. Then came the voicemail. I let it sit for an hour before listening. When I finally played it, his voice was barely controlled rage. Natasha, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is fucking crazy. Divorce papers? Served at my office? On my first day at a new job? Do you understand what you've done to my professional reputation? Everyone saw. Everyone. My new boss, the team I'm supposed to be leading, Abigail. He stopped. Caught himself saying her name. My colleagues, they all saw some process server hand me legal documents in the fucking lobby. And the papers, Natasha, what the fuck is all this? Financial misappropriation? Adultery? You're claiming I had an affair? Based on what, some friendly emails? This is vindictive and it's beneath you. We had an agreement to keep this amicable. We were going to see how long distance went. This is. The voicemail cut off at the time limit. There was a second one. It's me again. Look, I'm calming down. I get that you're hurt. I get that this whole situation isn't ideal. But serving me with papers the day after I arrive in Singapore? Having it delivered to my office? That's designed to humiliate me and you know it. If you wanted a divorce, we could have discussed it like adults. I would have agreed to mediation, to keeping things simple. But now you've made this adversarial and expensive and public. My entire new team thinks I'm some kind of cheater who abandoned his wife. Do you know what that does to my credibility here? Call me. We need to talk about this. We can still walk this back. Walk this back. As if I'd filed divorce papers by accident. I deleted both voicemails without responding. More texts came through over the next hour. Your attorney is asking for half of everything? Are you kidding? I supported you through your career too. This is what I get for being honest about needing space. You're trying to destroy me. Fine. Don't respond. But my attorney will be in touch and trust me, you won't like what he has to say. I screenshot every message. Sent them to Julia with a note, for the file. Her response, perfect. His anger is showing his hand. Keep not responding. Let him spiral. By midnight New York time, noon the next day in Singapore, Jared had sent 43 texts and left 11 voicemails. I blocked his number. He tried emailing. I set up an auto-response. Please direct all communication to my attorney, Julia Boseman, at. And included her contact information. Then I opened a bottle of wine Paris had left on my counter with a note, for when it all goes down. Cheers to freedom. I poured a glass, sat on my empty living room floor with my laptop, and checked my email. 3 responses to consulting inquiries I'd sent out last week. 2 of them wanted to schedule exploratory calls. Good rates. Interesting projects. An email from Vertex Solutions with my onboarding paperwork. Employee handbook, benefits enrollment, first week schedule. An email from the Brooklyn Public Library welcoming me as a new member. My life, happening. Moving forward. Built on my own terms. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then realized it might be movers or utility companies or any of the dozen things I was coordinating. Hello? Natasha? It's Wesley. Wesley Chen. I sat up straighter. Wesley, my former client who I'd connected Jared with. The one who'd introduced him to Abigail. Wesley. Hi. I'm calling because, look, I feel terrible. I had no idea about your situation with Jared. I just heard through the office today. About the divorce papers being served here. Word travels fast. Singapore's tech scene is small. Everyone knows everyone. He paused. I also had no idea that he and Abigail were. I wouldn't have introduced them if I'd known he was married and planning to leave you. I thought I was helping a friend's husband network professionally. You were, I said. You did exactly what I asked you to do. What happened after that isn't your responsibility. Still. I feel used. We both got used. Yeah. We did. For what it's worth, his first day did not go well. The papers being served was bad enough, but then the content, people talk, Natasha. The affair allegations, the timeline showing he'd been planning this for months while still married. His new boss is apparently questioning his judgment and integrity. And Abigail. He trailed off. What about Abigail? She's furious. Turns out she didn't know he was married either. He told her he was separated, that the divorce was already in progress. Finding out he lied to her, that she's named in legal documents as the affair partner, that her name is now associated with this mess, she's not handling it well. I felt something cold and satisfying settle in my chest. Interesting. I'm really sorry, Natasha. About all of it. Don't be. You helped me see who he really was. And honestly, Wesley, I'm doing great. New job in New York, new apartment, new life. This is the best thing that could have happened to me. After we hung up, I sat with that information. Abigail didn't know. She thought he was separated. She'd been lied to as much as I had. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But she'd still been sending flirty texts to a man she knew had a wife, even if he claimed they were separated. She'd still accepted expensive jewelry. She'd still been planning a future with someone else's husband. She'd made her choices. Now she got to live with them. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time I let it go to voicemail. It was Jared's mother, Gretchen. Natasha, honey, please call me. Jared told me what happened and I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. He said you filed for divorce without discussing it, that you're claiming awful things that can't possibly be true. I know you two were having difficulties with the distance, but surely this can be worked out. Please, just call me so we can talk about this. I deleted it. I wasn't interested in explaining myself to Gretchen or anyone else in Jared's family. They'd hear his version, the version where I was vindictive and crazy and filed for divorce out of nowhere because I was upset about Singapore. Eventually, they'd see the evidence. The emails, the texts, the financial timeline. Eventually, they'd understand. Or they wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I finished my wine, unpacked 2 more boxes, and went to bed in my new apartment in my new city with my new life spreading out ahead of me like a map with no predetermined destination. Somewhere on the other side of the world, Jared was probably still trying to do damage control. Still trying to explain to his new colleagues and his new girlfriend and his new boss why his wife had served him with divorce papers alleging adultery and financial misconduct. Still trying to make himself the victim of this story. Let him try. I had receipts. I had documentation. I had 7 years of evidence showing exactly who'd sacrificed what in our marriage. And I had something he'd never counted on. I had a life that was better without him in it. The first week in Brooklyn passed in a blur of unpacking, furniture delivery, and onboarding calls with Vertex Solutions. I barely thought about Jared. Not because I was suppressing feelings, but because I was genuinely busy building something new. But the fallout from Singapore reached me anyway, in pieces, through unexpected channels. Day 3, an email from Wesley. Thought you should know, Jared's settling in period is not going well. His boss scheduled a conversation about judgment and professional conduct after the papers were served. Apparently having divorce proceedings that allege marital misconduct delivered to your new workplace on day 1 raises questions about character. The leadership team is concerned about how this reflects on the company. No formal action yet, but his probationary period just got extended from 3 months to 6. I read it twice. Probationary period extended. That meant 6 months before his position was secure. 6 months where any misstep could result in termination. 6 months of looking over his shoulder. Day 5, Paris called with news she'd heard through the professional network. So apparently Abigail Mason broke up with him. Publicly. In the office cafeteria. I was assembling an IKEA bookshelf at the time. Set down my screwdriver. How do you know this? Sarah from that design conference last year? Her company shares office space with Jared's Singapore office. She saw the whole thing. Abigail confronted him about lying to her about the separation, about the divorce papers showing he'd been planning to leave you for months while still acting married. She called him a coward and a liar in front of like 30 people, then dumped her coffee on his laptop and walked out. His laptop? Destroyed. And since it was company property, he had to file an incident report explaining why a colleague destroyed his computer. Which meant admitting to the relationship. Which violated company policy about disclosing romantic relationships between team members. I felt a smile spreading across my face. He's having a great week. It gets better. His boss apparently told him that Singapore was supposed to be a fresh start for him professionally, but he'd brought interpersonal drama that's affecting team morale and company reputation. There's talk of reassigning him to a less visible role. Less visible. That was corporate speak for, we're demoting you without officially demoting you. Jared had moved to Singapore for a VP position. Now he was facing probation extension, a public breakup, and potential demotion. All within 1 week. Day 7, Julia forwarded me an email from Jared's new attorney, based in Boston. The tone was aggressive, threatening, full of language about malicious prosecution and defamation. Julia's note above it, standard intimidation tactics. Ignore completely. They have no case and they know it. The attorney's email demanded I withdraw the divorce filing, claimed the adultery allegations were unfounded, insisted I deliberately timed the service to cause maximum professional damage. That last part was true. I had timed it deliberately. But that wasn't illegal, just strategic. Julia's response to them was perfect. My client has documented evidence supporting every claim in the filing. If your client wishes to dispute the evidence, we welcome that discussion in court with full disclosure of all communications, financial records, and testimony from relevant witnesses. Please advise if you'd like to proceed with litigation or if your client would prefer to negotiate a settlement. Translation: we have the receipts, try us. I never heard from that attorney again. Day 9, my first day at Vertex Solutions. The office was in Soho, open floor plan, exposed brick, the kind of startup aesthetic that actually worked. My boss, Claudette Pullman, was a former McKinsey consultant who'd gone into operations leadership and had zero patience for corporate nonsense. Welcome to chaos, she said, showing me to my desk. We're scaling fast, breaking things constantly, and need someone who can build systems that don't fall apart when we double in size every 6 months. That's literally my specialty. I know. That's why we hired you. Also, I looked you up. Impressive client portfolio for someone who was supposedly doing freelance consulting as a side thing. It was never a side thing. It just got treated that way. Claudette looked at me with something like recognition. Let me guess. Partner who didn't take your work seriously? Ex-partner. As of last week. Good for you. Nothing kills ambition faster than someone who needs you to be smaller so they can feel bigger. She handed me a coffee. We don't do that here. You're smart, you're capable, you're going to run things eventually. Own it. I felt something unlock in my chest. Permission I'd been waiting for someone to give me, not realizing I could give it to myself. By the end of week 1, I'd mapped out operational inefficiencies in 3 departments and presented a restructure proposal that would save the company $200,000 annually while improving workflow. Claudette looked at my presentation and said, "This is VP level work. Keep this up and we'll talk about accelerating your timeline." VP level. The position Jared had moved to Singapore for. I was being told I was tracking toward in New York. In a better company. With better pay. Without having to abandon anyone to get there. Day 12, Paris visited for the weekend. We walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, ate pizza in Dumbo, drank wine in my apartment while she helped me hang art. "You seem different," she said, studying a print we just leveled. "Lighter. I feel lighter. Like I'd been holding my breath for 7 years and finally remembered how to breathe." "Have you heard anything else from Jared?" His attorney sent a threatening email. Julia destroyed them. Other than that, nothing directly. Though I keep hearing updates through the network about how badly things are going for him. Do you feel bad about it? I thought about that. Really considered it. No. I feel like justice is happening. He made choices, lying to me for 4 months, planning his exit while letting me support him, starting an affair while still married, deliberately excluding me from his life plans. These are just the natural consequences of those choices. You're not even a little bit satisfied by his suffering? I'm satisfied by my thriving. His suffering is just a side effect. Paris raised her wine glass. I'll drink to that. We clinked glasses. Day 14, I got an email from Jared's father, George Mills. Short, formal. "Natasha, Jared told us about the divorce proceedings. We're disappointed things ended this way. If you'd like to talk, we're here. George." I almost didn't respond. Then I realized that unlike Jared, his parents deserved honesty. I wrote back, "George, I appreciate the offer. The truth is, Jared had been planning to leave me for 4 months before he told me. During that time, he started an emotional affair with a colleague in Singapore, used marital funds to buy her jewelry, and told his employer he was single. I found extensive documentation of all of this. The divorce filing includes evidence of his deception. I'm sure Jared has told you a different version of events, but this is what actually happened. I wish you and Gretchen well. Natasha." I attached a PDF. Just one email. The one where Jared told his realtor in Singapore he was single, no pets, quiet tenant, while we were still married and living together. George never responded. But 3 days later, Gretchen sent a message, "I'm so sorry. We didn't know. You deserved better than this." That was the only closure I needed from his family. Day 16, Wesley called again. Quick update, Jared got reassigned. He's no longer VP of Asia Pacific Operations. They moved him to a senior manager role on a project team. Same salary, technically, but it's definitely a step down in terms of visibility and authority. That was fast. The company doesn't mess around with people who create HR problems in their first 2 weeks. And between the divorce drama, the public breakup, and the interpersonal issues, he become a liability. They're keeping him because they already invested in the relocation, but his fast-track trajectory is dead. After we hung up, I sat with that information. Jared had given up our marriage, my support, and 7 years of partnership for a VP position in Singapore. A position he'd now effectively lost through his own actions. He'd traded everything for nothing. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my Brooklyn apartment with a senior consultant position that was tracking toward VP, in a company that valued my work, in a city I'd always wanted to live in, building a life that was entirely mine. The math was simple. He'd subtracted me from his life and ended up with less. I'd subtracted him from mine and ended up with more. 3 months into my New York life, I barely recognized myself. Not physically, though I'd started running along the Brooklyn waterfront and had never felt stronger. The difference was internal. Fundamental. I'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. At Vertex Solutions, my operational restructure had been implemented across all departments. The company saved $340,000 in the first quarter, $140,000 more than my initial projection. Claudette called me into her office on a Friday afternoon in July. "We're promoting you to VP of Operations. Effective immediately." I stared at her. "It's been 3 months. And you've done 2 years of work in that time. The board reviewed your performance metrics. They were unanimous." She slid a folder across her desk. "New salary is $285,000 base plus equity increase. You've earned this." I opened the folder. Saw the number. Nearly triple what I'd been making as a freelancer while supporting Jared's career. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Don't thank me. You did the work. I just made sure the right people noticed." That night, Paris took the train down from Boston. We celebrated at a rooftop bar in Williamsburg, the Manhattan skyline glittering across the water. "VP in 3 months, Paris said, shaking her head. "You know what that means?" "What?" "You were always this good. You were always this capable. You just had someone in your life making you think you weren't." The truth of that settled over me. 7 years of being told my work was secondary. 7 years of being the supportive partner while treating my own ambitions as negotiable. 7 years of making myself smaller. I'd never been small. I'd just been with someone who needed me to be. "I got headhunted last week," I said. "Tech company in San Francisco. They want me to build their entire operations infrastructure from scratch. Chief Operating Officer role. $400,000 plus equity." Paris nearly dropped her drink. "Are you taking it?" "No. I like New York. I like Vertex. But it's nice to know I'm worth that." I smiled. A year ago, I would have asked Jared if I should take it. Would have considered how it would affect his career. Now I just make decisions based on what I actually want. Character development. Paris raised her glass. "You love to see it." My apartment had transformed too. The empty space I'd moved into was now fully furnished with pieces I'd chosen: mid-century modern credenza, velvet sofa in deep green, bookshelves filled with designed texts and novels I actually wanted to read. Art on every wall from local Brooklyn artists. I'd created a home office that was actually mine. Standing desk by the window, ergonomic chair, dual monitors, the kind of professional setup I'd always wanted but never prioritized when sharing space with Jared. My client work continued on the side. I'd kept 3 retainer clients at premium rates. Not because I needed the money, but because I enjoyed the work. The consulting that Jared had dismissed now brought in an additional $60,000 annually on top of my VP salary. I'd made more money in 3 months in New York than in any full year with Jared. The professional network I'd built expanded exponentially. Without the weight of supporting someone else's career, I had energy to invest in my own. I joined industry groups, spoke on panels, published articles about operational efficiency. My LinkedIn profile went from 400 connections to 2,000. People started reaching out to me, not the other way around. In August, I got a message from a former client, Sam Levingston, who ran a venture capital firm. "Natasha, I'm looking for operational advisors for our portfolio companies. You interested in board positions? We're talking $50,000 per board, maybe 2 meetings a quarter. Your expertise would be invaluable." Board positions. At 38. The kind of opportunities I'd thought were decades away. I said yes. By September, I was on 3 boards. The income was almost passive, attending quarterly meetings, providing strategic guidance, leveraging expertise I'd been building for 15 years. My total annual compensation, $465,000. Not counting equity or potential bonuses. Jared's VP's salary in Singapore had been $180,000. Before he got effectively demoted. I wasn't competing with him, I'd stopped thinking about him entirely. But the numbers told a story. The partner who'd said I'd be holding him back had been the only thing holding me back. One Saturday morning, I was working at a coffee shop in Park Slope when someone said my name. Natasha? Natasha Archibald? I looked up. A woman about my age, professional, kind face. I'm Julia Chen. I was at the Operational Efficiency Conference last month, heard your panel on scaling startup infrastructure. Your framework was brilliant. I've implemented parts of it at my company already. We talked for an hour. She was a COO at a Series B startup, navigating the exact challenges I'd presented solutions for. We exchanged information, scheduled a coffee meeting. By the following week, her company had hired me as a consultant for a 3-month engagement. $45,000 for 3 months of advisory work. This kept happening. My reputation preceded me. Work found me. Opportunities multiplied. I'd spent 7 years hustling for clients, keeping my rates low, treating my business like something I should apologize for. Now I was turning down work because I had too many offers. The difference wasn't my skills, those had always been there. The difference was my context. Without someone diminishing my work, my confidence had crystallized. Without someone else's needs taking priority, my ambition had room to breathe. I was the same person I'd always been. I just finally removed the person who'd convinced me I was less. In October, 6 months after leaving Cambridge, I did something I'd been avoiding. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, I was objectively thriving. But because Paris had pointed out that I'd gone from betrayal to strategy to execution to success without ever actually processing the emotional weight of what had happened. You documented everything except your feelings, she'd said. Maybe deal with those too. Dr. Samantha Reeves had an office in Brooklyn Heights, all warm lighting and comfortable furniture. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and the kind of direct eye contact that made you feel actually seen. Tell me why you're here, she said in our first session. My ex-husband planned to leave me for 4 months without telling me. I found out, documented everything, filed for divorce while he was on a plane to Singapore, and rebuilt my entire life in 6 months. Now I'm successful and happy, and I want to make sure I'm actually processing this healthily and not just performing recovery. Dr. Reeves smiled slightly. That's a very strategic way of describing emotional trauma. I'm good at strategy. I can see that. But strategy is thinking. I'm more interested in feeling. How do you feel about what happened? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I don't know, I said finally. Mostly I feel fine. Fine is not a feeling. Fine is what we say when we don't want to name the actual feeling. Over the next several sessions, we unpacked that. The anger I'd transmuted into action. The grief I'd skipped entirely by staying busy. The betrayal I'd documented but never actually sat with. You went into survival mode, Dr. Reeves said during our 4th session. You saw the threat, gathered resources, executed an escape plan. That's adaptive. That's smart. But you never gave yourself space to feel hurt. Feeling hurt wasn't useful. Feelings aren't about usefulness. They're about being human. She was right, and I hated that she was right. We talked about patterns. How I'd learned to manage Jared's moods, anticipate his needs, make myself useful so I'd be valued. How I'd confused being needed with being loved. You weren't a partner in that marriage, Dr. Reeves said. You were infrastructure. The moment you stopped being useful, he discarded you. That landed hard. I let him do that, I said. I made myself useful instead of making myself valued. You did what many people do in relationships with narcissistic dynamics. You adapted to survive. That's not a weakness. But now you get to choose different patterns. We talked about trust. How I'd trusted Jared completely and been betrayed completely, and how that made future trust feel dangerous. Trust isn't binary, Dr. Reeves said. You don't have to choose between trusting blindly and trusting no one. You can trust gradually, with boundaries, while paying attention to whether people's actions match their words. That felt revolutionary. Like permission to be both open and careful. In November, I ran into someone from my past. Jason Pullman, a guy I'd dated briefly before Jared, who'd moved to New York for work around the same time I had. We'd stayed loosely connected on social media. We met for coffee in Fort Greene. He was a data scientist now, working for a financial firm, still funny and easy to talk to. "I heard you got divorced," he said. "I'm sorry. I'm not. Best thing that ever happened to me." He looked surprised. That's a healthy perspective. Took therapy to get there. But yeah. I'm good. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about his work, his apartment in Clinton Hill, the marathon he was training for. I told him about Vertex, the board positions, the consulting practice I'd rebuilt. When we parted, he said, "We should do this again. If you're interested." I was surprised to find I was interested. Not in rushing into anything, but in the possibility. In being open to something developing naturally without forcing it or fitting myself into someone else's expectations. "I'd like that," I said. We started meeting regularly. Coffee, then dinner, then a gallery opening in Chelsea. Nothing rushed. Nothing pressured. Just two people enjoying each other's company. One night over Thai food, Jason asked about Jared. "Do you ever hear from him?" "No. It's been 7 months. The divorce is processing. His attorney tried to fight it initially, but gave up when they saw the evidence. Now it's just paperwork." "Do you think about him?" I considered the question honestly. Sometimes. Not with anger anymore. More like curiosity. Like he's a character in a story I used to be part of but isn't mine anymore. That's growth. That's therapy, I corrected, smiling. In December, the divorce was finalized. Julia called with the news. "It's done. Settlement was approved, equitable division of assets with compensation for your documented financial contributions." He didn't contest in the end. "How much?" $73,000. Plus he's responsible for all legal fees on both sides. $73,000. Not the full $87,000 I'd calculated, but close. Enough to feel like acknowledgement. Like the system had seen my contribution and valued it. "Thank you, Julia. For everything. Thank you for being the most organized client I've ever had. Made my job easy." That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and the settlement documents. Looked at my name, Natasha Archibald, no longer Mills, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Complete. Not because the divorce was final, but because I'd proven something to myself. That I could be betrayed and not break. That I could lose a marriage and gain a life. That I was more than who someone else said I was. My phone buzzed. Text from Jason, "Dinner Friday? There's a new place in Prospect Heights I want to try." I smiled and typed back, "Yes. 7 p.m. Perfect." I set down my phone and looked around my apartment. At the life I'd built in 8 months. At the career that had exploded. At the future that felt open and full of possibility. Jared had said I was staying behind. He was right. I had stayed behind. Behind him. Behind the life that was holding me back. And then I'd built something so much better. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.